Today, so we're going to use the hobbies list and we're going to use the hobby index that we've passed in here in our vertical stack. Okay, let's build and run. Is going to be how to create an app that has different options and it iterates through a list, and what it can then do is you can view your summary and it'll pass those options back to the main view and you can back return to here. Nice and straightforward. So the first thing I want to do is go to Xcode and to create a new Xcode project. Let's call this app options. So it's an iOS app. Options, and we don't need core data for this one. We're just going to put all the data in ourselves. Make sure it is SwiftUI interface. I'm going to create this on my desktop. File. And like I said, data structure. And in here, I'm going to put some of my hobbies. So some of those hobbies came from a website. So these weird hobbies. So we're going to create a hobbies list. Oops, hobbies list. And it's a list, so it's got those square brackets. And some of the hobbies that we're going to do is extreme ironing. And we're going to do mooing. Beetle fighting. Pretty much anything you want to list, our first kind of list. Etc, etc. Hobbies, I'm going to put a list of names in here as well. And we could put a list of colors or anything else. Anything weird or wacky or like another list. So I've got my list of hobbies and I've got a list of names. Now notice my names are actually mapped. So I have a name and a meaning behind it. So this actually becomes the key. And then this here, this becomes like what we call like a raw value, like the actual value for that name. Now let's jump back into our content view and resume, and we should see our body. Now I'm going to need to know which item I'm using in each of our lists, and so to kind of keep count of where we're up to in our list, we actually call them index. So we're going to have a name index, and we're going to start at the start of the list, and we're going to have an age index. Oh, well, rather, it doesn't even need an index because age is just a number, so 15. And at state var, we're going to have a hobby index. And then our last one is going to be like a summary view. And I'm going to use a sheet. And so I'm going to start by not showing that sheet of summary data. Okay, so our next step, what we're going to do is I'm going to remove this hello world and put in a vertical stack. And I'm going to put in a text. Create your person. And it's going to have a font. Headline, so it's nice and large, so you can see it over here. And then I'm going to put a horizontal stack in. And this is going to hold my options. So my first option is going to be the name. And let's make this font headline as well. Nice and simple. And then basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to have my names. So I'm going to have text. And I've got my name. So in my data structures, I call this names list. So I'm going to go back into my content view and say names list. And I'm going to grab the dot keys. And what I'm going to do is put this into an array. and then I'm going to get the use the name index, the one that we created up here, the very first name. And then I'm going to pass that into my text. So it's going to be the first name, I suppose, in the text. So you can see create your person name, and then underneath that, when we hit resume, we should have our first name in our list. There it is. Now that's not enough for me, so I'm actually going to need to have like an up and a down arrow to make this work. So if our name index is greater than 0, then what we're going to do is have a button. And what the button's going to do, it's going to add one to the name index, +1. And I'm also going to put some text in here. It's going to have the up arrow, like that. I'm just going to make my view a little bit wider so this is all on one line. Okay, so that's if our name index is greater than 0. Otherwise, it's just going to have the same text, but it's going to be a little bit grayer. So I'm going to use opacity, and I'm going to go, let's go 0.4. So that kind of shows that it's there, but it's grayed out kind of thing. You can't interact with it if the name index is less than 0. Sorry, is greater than 0. Or actually, no, in this case, if it's less than 1. So if it's 0 or below, then it'll show this. So that's kind of our first button. So I'm going to paste that below my text as well. So then you'll have another down button. I'm just going to change the text to down using my emojis. I'm going to copy that and paste that here. And now if name index is going to be greater than our list of total names, so this is going to be our names list, .count, and I've got to take 1 away. And the reason why is because when you're counting, you start at 1, but our index starts at 0. So we've got to take 1 away so that our index matches, or is kind of starting from 0 as well. And so now you can see candy cane. And so now when we run, you should be able to see I'm a double, and then you can actually cycle through your names and it will gray out when it gets to the bottom of that list. So you can see I can't go any further, and then you can go up as well the same way. So that's kind of our first item, I suppose, is this text name. So I'm going to collapse this vertical stack. I'm going to put a divider in. The divider is like a nice, really like a straight line. And it's going to be like full height of the window, which is too big for me. So I'm going to set my divider height using the frame. Let's go 100. Like that. And so now you've got a divider that sits beside between the name and our next option. So I'm going to copy this vertical stack because I like how I've laid that out, and paste it in. And our next option is going to be for age. Now age is a little bit different. Instead of using the name index, all we've got to do is the actual age. So if the age is greater than, let's say, our youngest person in our app, we can set a minimum age. So I'm going to set it to 5. Then we can go age +1. And then if our age is less than, so let's say 120, so as long as our person is less than 120, then we'll be able to add one to our age. The last thing I want to do is kind of in the middle here, we have this text with the array of the names list name index, but I'm going to replace that with age. So it's going to have like an age in here instead. Now that might throw an error because our age is not in a string format. So I'm going to put it in quotation marks and then use an escape character to force it into a string. So now when I resume, I should have my age on this side. So remembering we've got our random name and then we've got our age, and we can use the play button again. You can see my nice little divider there. And I can up my age and I can go down from my age as well. So that's really handy. Now you'll notice I've got a +1 and a +1. So one of them, if my age is greater than 5, I can take away 1. And then I'll just double check up here as well. Yeah, so my name index, I need to take away 1 as well. So this is take away 1 and this is +1. So we're moving up and down that name list. Same with our age, we're moving down and we're moving up in age as well. So that's really important, that when we press this up button, it goes down, and when we press the plus button, it goes up. Okay, so our next step, what I'm going to do is collapse this vertical stack again. I'm going to grab that divider and I'm going to put another copy there. And our last option that we're going to talk about with our person, that's going to be their hobbies or hobby. So I'm going to grab that vertical stack and copy and paste it. This one is going to be hobby. And so that'll make the third option. And I'm going to use something very similar to the name index, but this time I'm going to use the hobby index. So if the hobby index is greater than 0, then we have our button which we can reduce our hobby index. Otherwise, if our hobby index is greater than our hobbies list, so I'm going to say hobbies list dot count, dot count -1, and again we're taking 1 away because our index starts at 0. Then our hobby index is going to add 1. And now the text, what we're going to look for is actually the hobby hobbies list, and we're going to look for specifically the one at hobby index. So extreme ironing, and so when you again run it, you can go up and down that list. Now you'll notice it kind of skews the content a little bit. So what we might want to do is equally size each of these. And to do that, I'm going to collapse this vertical stack. So we have 1, 2, 3 vertical stacks. So I'm going to add a frame max width dot infinity. And I'm going to copy and paste that on my other vertical stacks as well. So it's going to kind of force them to be as maximum width as they can. So you can see they all each occupy equal spacing. Okay, so we're pretty much done. The last thing, so this name and hobby, I might actually put some padding on our horizontal stack. So it's not right on the edge of the screen. So it's going to pull it in just a little bit. Like that. And then what I'm going to do, my hobby extreme ironing, I'm going to have to find that one, which is in my last vertical stack. Here's my hobbies. And this text, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some modifiers to it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a line limit of 4. So as long as there's less than 4 lines, it will put them in. And what I might do as well, I might set a multi-line text alignment to center. That way it kind of centers the text, so rather than them being leading or at the start here. So that looks a little bit nicer too. That's pretty much it. So the last step, I suppose, is after this vertical stack. So there's our 3 vertical stacks with our dividers in between. And this is in a horizontal stack, so I'm going to collapse that horizontal stack as well. I'm going to then create a bit of a spacer. Frame, let's set a height of 50. So it's going to sit kind of under this and push everything up a little bit. And then the last option would be a button. And the action, what it's going to do, it's going to set my show summary view to true. View summary. Like that. This is all on one line too, by the way. It's just because it's on line 87, it's pushing to the next line. And so then what I'm going to do is, outside of my vertical stack, I'm then going to add a full screen cover. And I'm actually looking for the is presented. So this is the wrong one. Is presented in content. So the is presented is going to be the show summary view as a binding, because we're going to change that as we dismiss the view. And the content is going to be our next view, which I haven't created yet. So let's go ahead and create our summary view. Now, normally you'd create this in a new SwiftUI view. So we create a new SwiftUI view. Let's call this summary view. And what we're going to need is a name, an age, and a hobby. And you know what? These don't change, so let's create a constant. That looks pretty good. Now I'm also going to want to dismiss this view later on, so I'm going to have an environment, what do we call it, a presentation mode. and then we can use that to dismiss this view later on. Now, this is one of the rare times I'm going to use this fix command to put in name, age, let's make it 100, and then hobby, your hobby here. And we can make a bit of a summary view based on these values. So the first thing I want to do is get rid of the text, and I'm going to put in a vertical stack. So it'll just be a blank view for now. And I'm going to put an image. This is just a placeholder. So we've got a little person. It's resizable. Its aspect ratio, let's go dot fit. So it doesn't skew like that. Let's set our frame width 100, so it's a bit smaller again. And let's make our foreground color dot secondary. You can replace this with an actual image too, like this is just a placeholder, just so that it's not such an empty screen. Next, we're going to have our text, which is going to say introducing, and then your name here. And we want this to be nice and large, so let's go font, large title. And then I'm going to want it like a bit more about the person. So I'm going to have a look in the names list, and I'm going to look for the key with that name, and it's going to return like the value for that name. Now that's going to cause an error here because I haven't actually used a name that's in our names list. So let's go ahead and use one of those. So I'm going to use the first one, Alan Wrench, my summary view here, and then that will kind of fix that up a little bit. Introducing Alan, a guy who's handy with tools. Then I'm going to have a spacer. And then we can have like a bit of describing age, person, so we have like how old they are, their name, like to participate in your hobby in their spare time. And I'm going to go for a multi-line text alignment dot center. And you can see that's all the way down the bottom because this spacer in the middle should have been a height of 50, not a width of 50. That looks better. And then I'm going to put another spacer in with a frame height of 50 again, just to look nice and uniform, and a button. And what the button's going to do is going to return to customization. And so this button action is going to be presentation mode, wrapped value, dismiss. So it's just going to go back to that view. That's pretty much it, ready to go. So I'm just going to go back to my content view, and this full screen cover is presented. So when what we want for a full screen cover is the summary view, and it's going to want the name, age, and hobby of our person. So we can actually add our name, and the name is going to be the array of the names list, keys, and we're going to use the name index. We're going to pass that name in. The age is going to be age, nice and easy. So we're going to use the hobbies list, and we're going to use the hobby index that we've passed in here in our vertical stack. Okay, let's build and run. So here's our simulator. So now we can cycle through our names and increase or decrease our age, and we can cycle through our hobbies. And so then I can click on View Summary and it pops up and tells me a little bit about that person. And we can return back to this view and go again with a different age. And you can see it's changed the age on this screen too.